All right. So look, you clicked on this video. You know what this is about. We're going to rank some things. And seeing as how I just completed basically all the 2D Metroid games, I figured now's a pretty good time to go through this list and give them a little bit of a ranking from my perspective. Let's see if we can agree on some things, yeah? All right. Welcome here to the Metroid tier list. Hey! As you can see, we got a bunch of games here already. I put them down in the not applicable because, well, they don't really apply here. We're basically going off of the 2D Metroids, and we'll add 3D later. In the meantime, however, if you want to get a deeper look into what I think about the actual 2D Metroids down here, there should be a nice little end card or maybe some kind of title pop out. I don't know. We'll figure that out later. Let's get to ranking. Now, I should stress these are where I personally place these things on this tier list. Not to say that one game is actually better than the other. We're all going to be maybe a little bit different in how we approach these, and maybe we'll place things on here a little differently than I would. So let's try not to get too ahead of the details here, you know? I have them in chronological order, and by that I mean like release order. So we're going to start with the original Metroid, the one that kind of did everything. All right. Oh, man, this is going to be rough. How am I going to justify where to put Metroid? Because it basically started it all. I'm going to put it there for right this second. I'm going to readjust. I'm going to make my argument on where I think Metroid, the original, deserves to be. Metroid, as it exists from 1986, is a very unique game, especially of its time. Not a lot of games allowed you to kind of free roam the world like this one does. That said, it's rough, man, and like very rough, but all ideas start somewhere, even the rough ones, so we kind of have to give it its due. Now, I'm not sure if it's B specifically, but I'm not prepared to throw it any lower than C. I think C is perfectly good, middle of the road. It definitely gets a passing grade. It just, you know, needed a little bit more refinement, so that's fine. We're good. We're all right. We're starting out pretty good. Metroid 2, Return of Samus. Now I'm going to go ahead and put this right here again right now, just to talk about it a little bit. That's probably not where it's going to wind up, although maybe we'll see. So Metroid 2. This one is interesting. Interesting in that it is very important to the timeline as a whole. Without Metroid 2, you don't really get the events of Super or Fusion or anything else, right? Like, it sets the stage for basically the rest of the series, and we just kind of have to let that do its thing. That said, it was a Game Boy title of all things, so you gotta give it some of that give or take, right? Like, obviously, being on the Game Boy, it was its own thing, but there were very limited buttons on that, so, like, what are you gonna do? I think the obvious choice here, for me anyway, on like what I think is better, I do think it is better than Metroid. I think Metroid 2 Return of Samus definitely earns its keep. I'm going to actually keep it here at B. It's rough around the edges, but it's definitely unique and kind of has its place amongst the fan base. And I can't not put it here because, I mean, it sets up so much for the rest of the series. Right? Super Metroid. Oh man, Super Metroid. Alright, Super Metroid. So here's the deal with this. It is undoubtedly the pinnacle of the Metroid series up to this point, right? There's only been 3 games so far, one on the Nintendo, one on the Game Boy, and now Super Nintendo comes out, and it's kicking hard. There's so much that gets added to Super Metroid that expands the game in so many different ways. Not to say least of all is just the whole exploration aspect. There is so much that you can do in Super Metroid, and in basically any order that you want to do it in. It is unbelievable. Now, that said, it does have some issues. It's not the perfect game, although I will say it's pretty close. It gets to the greatness that I think most people associate with Metroid. I think it stems from Super specifically, and that's fine. That's great. It definitely earns its keep. But where is this keep? Where do we put this on this list? I'm going to go ahead. Ooh. want to put it in S because it's just that good, but there are aspects about it. That's fine. There are aspects about it. We'll leave it in S though, because it's definitely where the series took off into the stratosphere, right? Like this thing went ballistic. Unfortunately, sales-wise, didn't do so good, but that's fine. It doesn't matter what it did in sales. What matters is what we feel in here, right? In the heart of hearts, I know that Super Metroid deserves to be in that top spot. Everybody's probably going to be thrilled with that, or maybe not thrilled with that because, oh, it's overrated. Is it overrated? Maybe. Does that matter? Not at all, because it set a standard. And that standard gets met by basically everything else. This leaves us with Metroid Fusion. I'm going to go ahead and leave Super where it is in S, but I'm also going to put this here. And I'm going to tell you why. Now, Fusion may be not the favorite amongst a lot of the fans out there of the series. And I think most of that has to do with just how linear the game feels in comparison to its predecessor. It's like night and day. But a lot of the criticism I think it faced at first has been kind of overturned. And I think a lot of people over the years have realized that maybe we gave Fusion a bad rap. And that's because, well, it was developed for a handheld system. Now you might be thinking, yeah, but so was Metroid 2. And you're right. But Metroid 2 faces a similar issue in that it's meant to be played in small, bite-sized little bursts. That's why you're hunting down numbers of Metroids and whatnot. It's easier to break up the game into smaller segments for portable reasons, as opposed to having this massive world to kind of, slowly crawl through. Imagine if you were playing Super Metroid, right, on a Game Boy Advance back in the day, and your batteries were dying, and you couldn't remember the last save room or anything that you were at. You don't really have that issue with Fusion. Fusion is pretty streamlined. You know exactly where at least one save room is, and whether or not you can get back to it is 100% up to you, but you know it's there. And, I don't know, story-wise, I guess it's pretty good. Definitely has more going on than most other Metroid games up to this point, which were basically just, Samus is here now go do a thing. Obviously, there was more to the stories than that. That's just a, oversimplification, but that's more or less what it felt like. Zero Mission. For a long time, and I'm talking a long time, Zero Mission was considered the best. Just 100% the greatest. Especially on the Game Boy Advance. When compared to Fusion, again, night and day difference. So, it's because of that, I'm going to go ahead and put Zero Mission right here, right next to Super, because that's honestly where it belongs. It's a great game. It's just the first game, but updated significantly. And outside of maybe a handful of other remakes, it's like blow for blow one of the best ones you could hope to get your hands on. So, I mean, if you haven't played it, definitely give it a shot. It expands on the story of Samus and everything that she went through. Definitely top tier. AM2R. Now, AM2R, not an official game by any stretch. However, amongst the community, it's pretty well received. And it puts me at an interesting space because I agree with the sentiment that this game is about as good as anybody could ever hope it to be. So, that's why I'm going to go ahead and nestle it right up there on S. I do think it stands toe-to-toe with Zero Mission. I think it stands toe-to-toe with Super Metroid. I think it is just spectacular, basically from beginning to end, and it's just a fun ride. Out of all the 2D pixelated games, I think AM2R is just, it might as well just be an official Nintendo release, in my eyes. Okay, this leaves us the last two titles, basically, to come out officially. We have Samus Returns and Metroid Dread. Now, Samus Returns. There's a lot of, contention about this game for a lot of different reasons. Namely, number one, it knocked AM2R, well, not off of anything, but it took it out of the equation, basically, because Nintendo, does what Nintendo does. They're well within their right to do. Still brutal, all the same. But Samus Returns offers a different take on what happened, and it expands on the lore a little bit more than a lot of the other games, honestly. And considering it's a remake of Metroid 2, it definitely takes this and amps it up a bit. Like, if you remove AM2R from the equation and you just solely focus on Samus Returns, it does have a lot of issues and things that I personally don't very much care about it. That said, it offers in a lot of interesting story and other things to the formula, and it introduced the 360 rotational aim and the counter. And the counter is kind of where everybody, draws that line in the sand, and I get it. I'm with you on that one. It sucks to kill 100% of your momentum, and the game relies upon it too much. It's fun, right? Like, it's a fun idea, because, like, of course she can do that. It makes sense. There's a lot of things that Samus Returns does that just, like, makes sense. Like, the grapple beam, of course she can yank things down with that. Or, like I said, the counter. I think it's good. I don't think it's super good. So I'm going to put it right here, right next to its counterpart in the Game Boy, B tier. It brought some new interesting ideas to the table, and it really kind of tried to push the Metroid formula forward a little bit in its own unique direction. It just was maybe not 100% well received, and because of the whole thing with AM2R, it just kind of, I don't know, I guess fell flat for a lot of people. I think it's a good game. I would play it still, and I did recently, but that's just me. And all this leaves now for 2D Metroid is Dread. Dread is my favorite out of all of the games. Every single one of them. There's just so much that you can do in Dread that is super unique to it, and it introduces a lot of new movement tech for Samus, and just it does a lot of things right in my book. That said, a lot of people have their opinions on it, and a lot of that kind of zeroes in on the music, and people are right, the music in this game isn't as good as a lot of the other games, but when you're zeroing in on just one specific thing, and I'll give you the music is important, I 100% agree, but I mean, other than that, it's good. It's really good. Out of every single game that exists here, I play it probably more often than not. I think it sits pretty firmly amongst everything else in the A rank, like top A. And I would even say just barely maybe getting in on S. But it's just, it has a few issues, the music being one of them. The overall, like, I don't know, flow with the Emmy and like all the kind of repeat stuff that happens there. It's not bad per se, but it's not as open as Super Metroid, and it's not as like tight as Zero Mission is. But it's right there. It's so close. If it were me, like if I was going to be 100% biased, I would throw it up here. I would 100% of the time, every time, because I think overall, mechanically, it's better than the rest of these. Just 100%. Realistically, though, it kind of does tie you down a little bit, and you kind of have to work through it piecemeal, right? And, like, that's fine. It's the follow-up to Fusion, after all, so it's going to take from that quite a bit. There's nothing wrong with that, but that's where I would put it. Like, if I had it my way, it'd be an S, top tier every time, no questions asked. But this game doesn't live in a vacuum, so it has to contend with its siblings, right? So that's where I'm going to put that. Now, I know I said I wasn't going to do anything with the 3D games, mostly because I haven't played a good chunk of them in a long time. But going off of, I don't know, a bunch of memory, with exclusion to Metroid Prime 1, because that got the remaster. If I was going to add the 3D games, I'm not going to go super in-depth with it, because, again, I don't really know a whole lot. Metroid Prime, I'm going to put it in A. It's good. I like it. The scanning, fine. A little distracting from time to time, but it's fun. It takes everything that you like about a 2D Metroid and gives you a first-person perspective, and it's good. Solid all around. Maybe a little annoying here and there, and those Chozo ghosts, you know exactly what I'm talking about. But fine all the same. Metroid Prime 2. I like Prime 2 more than Prime 1. That said, it has a lot of the same kind of various problems. Still a lot of scanning. I like the idea of the light and dark world, although that's being basically ripped straight from, any Legend of Zelda game that has dual worlds in them. And again, that's most. So there's a little bit of back and forth there with that. I do like it. It's fun seeing some of the other alien creatures that exist in the world, like the Ing and the Lumoth. Cool to see. Love when the game decides to expand and move a little bit outward. Corruption I'm going to put there. And a lot of that, I don't think it was as tight as Metroid Prime 1 or 2. I think Metroid Prime 3 kind of, again, it opened up the scale and it showed you a little bit more of, the world that Samus inhabits. The universe, I should say. And that's all well and good. But it just doesn't feel as tight. Go to this planet, go to this planet, go to this planet, save this guy, oh no, they're dead, save this guy, oh no, they're dead. It's fine. Dealing with Dark Samus is always kind of, fun, because it's, a one-on-one kind of confrontation deal. But overall, it just feels tired at this point. Not to say it's not good. It's good. Obviously, it's above average, especially considering the rest of the contenders on this list. But, you know what I mean? Just hopefully Metroid Prime 4 will pick up the story and kind of expand on it, but we'll see. Hunters. Going right there. It's inconsequential, really. It kind of introduces you more to the outside world, things outside of Samus. I will give it points for being somewhat creative in that, with the multiplayer, everybody could pick their preferred style. It was an early DS release, so it really ham-fisted the touch controls. Not that there's anything wrong with that, really. It's just, why would you do that, They experimented, they tried. It's still the first-person perspective, which is neat. Graphics roughly on par with other handhelds at the time. 3D looking okay. Not a whole lot to really sink your teeth into. Story-wise, again, pretty inconsequential. This could have never happened, and nobody would ever be the wiser. You know what I mean? So it's there, it exists, and you're probably okay with it. I mean, if you're a fan of Metroid, you'll still probably like it. I do, but again, compared to the other 3D entries here, it's just not that great. And I think a lot of that has to do with just the hardware that it was on. If it was on the Wii or anything else, I think it probably would have been that much better for it. But what are you going to do? Ooh, Federation Force. I haven't really played Federation Force, so I don't really have a whole lot to say about it. So I'm just going to leave it kind of down here in NA because I don't have a whole lot of experience with it. I will say, as a Metroid fan, it was a little disheartening to watch this kind of become a thing and kind of sit off to the sideline being really, this is what we're doing, and not have Samus be the main focus. I'll get around to playing it eventually, obviously, but by then, who knows? I don't know. Right now, I don't really know what to say about it other than I don't know. I wish maybe when this came out there were other announcements to kind of bolster it, because at the time it felt like a gut punch. But again, I'll cross that bridge when I get to it. Other M. There's a lot that can be said about Other M. There are story implications. There are character implications. I was going to say assassinations, but there's a lot that gets added to Samus and her character. There's a lot that gets kind of put into perspective for the players. It had a weird direction from gameplay perspectives, but it's one that I have a lot of, I don't want to say aggression towards. More I have a sort of sympathy and empathy for it. Now, I'm going to put it in B, and I know you're thinking, what? B? That's on the same wavelength as Corruption and the 3DS game and Metroid 2? Yeah. Yes, it is. But for different reasons. And I think part of that has to do with my own personal feelings toward the game and how it kind of portrays things. And I'll dive way, way deeper into that when I eventually get around to talking about Other M, because for as rough as the story is, and the common complaints being well, Adam says you couldn't do the thing because you're not authorized, and that's dumb. And I agree. that is dumb. Of course you're going to put limiters on that. It'd be easy just to be like, yeah, Samus, go ahead and do whatever you got to do and rip this thing apart. And eventually she kind of does, but up to that, there's a lot of, we need to do this by the book. And that's just something I think kind of gets lost in translation. But again, I'll dive way more into that later. But for now, where this sits, for me personally, is right here. I will say, Corruption is better, but Other M, I think, is better than the original, just because of gameplay evolutions over time. And definitely better than Hunters, because, well, Hunters was a little rough when it first came out. Pinball. Pinball is pinball. I'm not really a pinball guy. It's fine. If it's the only thing around, I'll play some pinball, but like I'm never really jonesing for a game of pinball, you know what I mean? Having a Metroid Prime skin on it is cool, I guess, but that's it. That's all. It's fine. If you want a pinball game, you probably could do worse, but you could definitely do better. You could also just go to like an arcade and probably play pinball there. Yeah, I don't know. It's pinball. It's pinball. That's all it is. So here it is in its entirety. S through not applicable. S rank. I don't think anybody can really argue. These are top tier choices for sure. A rank. Solid across the board. Right? Dread. Great. Fusion. Fun. Prime. Excellent. Prime 2, excellent. B, Metroid 2, the original, good attempt, solid game. Samus Returns, good, awesome game. Corruption, fun, good. Just a little, like, at this point, kind of tired. If you're gonna play Prime, you're probably gonna play Prime. You know what I mean? Other M, I just kind of went through it. It's good. It's not great. I think kind of injures Samus's character overall, but we'll save that for later. Original Metroid, good, love it. It's the starting point. Everything's got to start somewhere, and this is where it started. Solid attempt overall. Prime Hunters, DS game. Cool. I like the novelty of it, but that's about it. It doesn't really provide much else outside of that, and the game itself is just a little rough and very inconsequential. Nothing really happens in here outside of, I guess, Silas following Samus, at the end, and maybe acting as the bridge to Prime 4. That's kind of that. Pinball. It's pinball. It's D tier. Pinball. Easy. I don't even think that was really a choice. Federation Force, I'll get to it eventually, and that's kind of that. Yeah, I don't know. In the meantime, hey, thanks for hanging out with me. I appreciate it. Hopefully you line up along with me on these placements here, and I know, Other Ram is going to get just... You guys are going to destroy it. I get it. I understand. But, yeah, okay. Everybody's got their own. But if you want to, at the end here, I'm going to have the whole playlist so far of the Metroid series retrospective that I have done. You can see my thoughts from beginning to end, and I'll have that right here. Or, if you want something maybe a little different, you can check out whatever YouTube recommends over here. Okay. Anyway, that's it. That's all. You guys enjoy your weekend, and I'll see you next time.